Hi y'all. I'm not sure where my video falls in the summer series rotation, but as I sit down to record this, the only one I've seen so far is from my old friend Mark Hodges. It was very professional looking. Mark did an excellent job and spoke eloquently. Uh, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you going out and watching it. Uh, this one's not going to be like that. This one's just me, my phone, and sitting in my cluttered office, and I for sure won't be speaking eloquently. I have a hard time even saying the word. But I did let Dinah give me a haircut and trim my pandemic beard, so there's that. I'm Mark Deal. I'm one of the community outreach deacons here at Levy, and I'm going to be talking about homelessness and our involvement with a couple of local nonprofits, Family Promise of Pulaski County and the Van. Family Promise is an organization that works with homeless families with children under 18. They provide temporary housing, food, transportation, uh, job skill, budgeting, home management training, and whatever else the family's needs to help them get back on their feet. The program usually runs 45 to 90 days, depending on how long it takes folks to get resituated. And they partner with local churches to provide the housing and the meals. And that's how Levy got involved, and this would be our third year to be involved, I believe. Each of the churches host the families a week at a time, uh, 4 times a year, once a quarter is what they try to do. Uh, Obviously, with the virus and how it's affected society, that housing by the churches has been temporarily suspended, and not sure when they will start doing that again. I know they spend a lot of time talking about it and thinking about how to safely do it and when to try to do it again. So they've had to look for other ways to help those that are unsheltered. One of the ways is they've put up some hand washing stations around the metro area. There's one at River City Ministry, there's one at Jericho Way, there's one at Second Baptist Church downtown, and one at Rock Region Metro, I believe. And I believe they're also looking at ways to put in some more and see if they can afford to do that and how to best do it. They've also started a mask drive, so if you sew masks or if you want to donate some masks to them, they would appreciate that, and they'll be handing them out to folks that need them. Now they've also, through some more donations and some grants and stuff, they've also been able to start housing some folks in temporary housing in motels, and for folks that qualify for that. And then they've also been helping others that have come to them find places in other shelters. So one of the ways that the churches that are part of the hosting schedule are being asked to help now that they've got some folks in hotels and motels, is during their week we will be providing the food and the meals for the families. And sorry. And Levy's next time, I believe, is end of July. As we get closer and I get more details, I'll pass that along to those of us that are volunteering in that, and we'll see how things go. If you're interested in volunteering or getting more information about Family Promise, you can visit them at their website, familypromisepc.org. And if you happen to be in a church that you think would be interested in joining as a host, please contact them, or you can contact me. I'll come talk to you about the program and let you know how we do it, and because they could really use some more churches and some more volunteers. So that's our a brief overview of Family Promise. Now the van's part of the One Inc., a local grassroots nonprofit, and the One Inc.'s mission is simple. It's to locate and love our unsheltered neighbors and to help them wherever they might be. Now the van is the mobile part of that mission, and we have a cargo van that we load with clothes, with food, with hygiene products, toilet paper, blankets, coats, whatever people need to survive on the street. We have teams that go out almost every night and hit a different part of the metro area. As a matter of fact, Diane and I and our friend Julie Delishaw from Levy, our nights are Thursdays, and we do North Little Rock. Now, as far as how the pandemic has affected the van just keeps on trucking. They have made, some modifications and some changes to help protect the volunteers and the folks that we serve, but it hasn't really missed a beat. We did have a little section, 3 or 4 days, where we shut down the warehouse and re-cleaned everything, and I know that the volunteers at the warehouse, they normally are there on Tuesdays and Thursdays. They changed that up and started going, I think every day or most days, and just so they could have smaller groups there and not have to be as close to people. I think they've just recently gone back to Tuesdays and Thursdays. One of the ways that the van handled the new situation was, the obvious, wearing masks, trying to do some social distancing. That's pretty hard to do when you meet groups of folks, but they tried. One of the big parts was no handshakes, no hugs, and if you know the folks that we meet and the volunteers, that was a hard part. No touching is kind of tough because there's lots of hugs and when folks are out. So another way they did is they developed an order sheet, and so one night you'd go out and hit an area and take orders, and then you take that order sheet back to the warehouse. The next day folks would fill those orders, and then somebody would go out that night and deliver. And that seemed to work for a while. It put a lot of more work on folks, but it seemed like the best solution at the time. Then it evolved, and when it got to be a little too much, they fixed kind of a plexiglass shield back at the back door of the van, where you could open the back door and the volunteer could be in the van and, and picking stuff out and handing it over the shield, and that protected both the volunteer and the folks that we served. Now, unfortunately, Diana and I and Julie, we fall in the high risk group for the virus. So since mid-March, we've backed off and we haven't been going out, and so the rest of the team has had to pick up our slack and cover for us, and we appreciate that greatly. We miss y'all, and hopefully we'll be back out there soon, but who knows with how this is going to go. But so the van part is, like I said, pretty much rolled on through the virus, and we'll continue to do that. Another part of the One Inc. is the field. It's an urban garden. We also have 200 to 300 chickens at this point, I think, laying eggs, and also have honeybees, so we collect honey, and that's taken out to the different camps to help get them a little bit of fresh food and stuff, and then the excess eggs and stuff are sold to local restaurants that help fund the field, and also I believe just recently he's hired a part-time person to come work. So that's one of the goals of the field, is to employ some folks. And so hopefully that'll continue to grow and employ some more folks. And then we had the emergency winter shelters, and that's how Levy got involved with the van. And emergency shelters are open in the winter when it gets extremely dangerous conditions. And what we consider that is when it gets to 32 and there's precipitation, snow, sleet, rain, and or if it hits 25 degrees and below, we'll open up. We'll be open from 7 at night till 7 in the morning. We provide a warm, safe place to sleep, a hot meal, some showers, and a washer and dryer, and some friendship. So that's and that, I'm not sure how the pandemic is going to affect shelters. I know we'll be looking into that. So if you'd like to know more about the van, you can find us at itsthevan.org. We can use some more help. So a couple things popped up on my Facebook recently, and I thought I'd share them with you. They seem relevant to what we do and how we try to treat people. First, I've seen several memes that have used the parable of the lost sheep from Luke, and I like that. It's where the shepherd leaves the 99 and goes out to find the one sheep that's been lost. And one of the things I like about that parable is it doesn't say how the sheep got lost. It doesn't say it wandered off. It doesn't say somebody took it. It doesn't say anything about how the sheep got lost, just the fact that it was lost and the shepherd went looking for it. And I think that kind of fits us. We look for folks that have fallen through the cracks, that have been separated from their flock, from their family, from their community, from society. And we try to find them and reconnect somehow, and help them in whatever way we can on their journey. And the second thing I saw was a post by the Micah 6 community out of Pontiac, Michigan, and it was a quote from a book, and I really liked it, so I'm going to read it. It's from the book In the Realm of Hungry Ghost, and I am going to substitute unsheltered neighbors for clients, because we don't consider our folks clients. So here it is. Our unsheltered neighbors aren't what people call the deserving poor. They're just poor, undeserving in their own eyes and in those of society. We don't have grand plans of redemption or any expectation of socially respectable outcomes, only an unsentimental recognition of the real needs of real human beings in the dingy present. We love on our neighbors because they are our neighbors, not as a carrot to lure them into a better life, not because they do or don't deserve it, but because loving them is what we are supposed to do, and because every human, no matter what they've done, are doing, have or have not accomplished, deserves to be loved unconditionally. I think that sums up our attitude pretty well. So for the rest of my time here, I want to tell some stories. I want to talk about some of the things that have happened and some of the folks that we've met. It's easy to look at the homeless, in an abstract sort of way and group people and think about people as a group. I'm hoping by sharing some of this that you will see them as people. They're not projects, they're not object lessons, they're just fellow humans trying to get by. So one of the first people that we met when we first opened the shelter was this 90-something-year-old skinny little tough as nails black lady named Miss Joan. Miss Joan came in, and it was me and I think there were 4 or 5 lady volunteers that night, because we were expecting to only have women. And came in and met Miss Joan, and got to talking to her, asking her how she was doing, if there was anything they could do for her, and she started complaining about her feet. So some of the ladies offered to wash her feet. So they sat her down, got everything ready, pulled her shoes and socks off, and then one of them came to me and said, we have to call somebody because her feet were a mess from being wet and cold for so long. So I called the only doctor that I had a number for, my friend Don Allen Frost from Levy, and Don Allen and his son came out in the sleet and came and took a look at Miss Jones' feet and cared for her a little bit, and ended up telling us that the best bet was to take her to the emergency room. They could do more than what he could do for her. So one of the volunteers took her and stayed at the emergency room for 3 or 4 hours that night. And they couldn't really do anything, but they were able to get her to go to the doctor, and took her, sometime the next week, and got her feet taken care of, and she went on her way. But yeah, Miss Joan is one of our favorites. If we don't see her, we start sending messages back and forth from the volunteers asking, to start looking for her. But you'll see her around North Little Rock. She stayed in the Levy area before. She stayed downtown North Little Rock. She used to stay over in Little Rock, and but she kind of moves around, and she usually moves around once people start trying to help her a little too much. And that sort of help is when they're trying to get her into an assisted living place or a nursing home or some sort of facility, and that's not for Miss Joan. The perfect place for Miss Joan was if we had a tiny little house someplace where she could keep her stuff and stay in from the weather and still be independent and nobody bother her too much. That would be Mrs. Joan, Miss Joan. One story about Miss Joan was when she was over in Little Rock, somebody had tried to help her a little too much, and she didn't like it, so she disappeared. We didn't see her for a couple of weeks, and then she showed back up over on the North Little Rock side, and we got to talking to her, and she had walked to Conway, which is a town about 30 miles from here, and had stayed there for a couple of weeks, and then some folks had apparently been trying to help her a little too much, and she didn't like it and walked back. And so that's Mrs. Joan. Like I said, she's one of our favorites, and that's going to be a tough one when she passes away. Let's see, who else are we going to talk about? Sam and Ashley, a couple that we've known for several years now, and sometimes when you meet people, you automatically make a connection, and there's something there, and an immediate friendship begins, and that is Sam and Ashley. From the first time we met them, there was a connection there, and they met while at our house. They were both at our house separately and met there, and fell in love. And they were both working, thought they had things under control, left, got them an apartment, and not sure what happened with Ashley's job, but she ended up out of work, and then Sam's job turned out to be a seasonal work, which he didn't know at the time, and so ended up out of a job, and money ran out, so they ended up back out on the street. That's when we met them, and so we'd known them for a year or so, and they had decided that things weren't just weren't working out here, and that they were going to move on, try someplace else. Excuse me. So they had friends in Oklahoma, so they went out to Oklahoma, got jobs, worked out there for a while, and ended up losing those. I'm not sure how, but they showed back up here, and this time when they showed back up, they had his, I think, 12-year-old son with them this time that was staying out in a tent with them. Then they got into the Family Promise program and happened to get to spend a week with us at Levy, which was pretty cool. And they were doing great in the program. They both gotten jobs, jobs that they liked, were saving some money, and started looking for a place to stay. They found a little place, put down a deposit, but it wasn't quite ready. It's supposed to be ready in a week, so the son didn't want to stay out on the street sleeping, so they got a motel room. The 1 week stretched into 2, it wasn't ready, and that stretched into 3. Sam got kidney stones, they lost their jobs, kept stretching out, and pretty soon all the money they saved was gone, and they're back out on the streets again. Down but not out. They're pretty optimistic folks, and when they get knocked down, they get back up. Are still trying. And now let's see. I want to mention Ann. Ann is a transgender vet that you'll see around North Little Rock, Panhandling. She's a hoot. I guess that's a good way to describe Ann. She's a hoot. She is funny. She is foul-mouthed but hilarious. And if you stop and talk to her, you're going to be there a half hour with her telling you some wild and crazy story, which might have a grain of truth in there somewhere. Just might. Yeah, we love Ann, and she gets a check. She's been housed several times, but things don't always work out. One of the problems is she has a fairly large, extended, unsheltered family that kind of hang around her, mainly because I think she gets a check, and she does pretty good panhandling. So that usually ends up messing up the housing situation. So they bounce from being housed to sleeping out on the street again, out in the woods someplace, or a lot of times she can use her check and the money that she gets from panhandling to rent a motel room. So there's Ann. If you see her, give her a little money. Say hi. Since I mentioned panhandling, let's get that out of the way. Anytime you talk about homelessness, people will ask you about panhandling. So here's my short bit on panhandling. Give or don't give. Do whatever you want. If you don't want to give, don't give. If you do want to give. One thing about it is not all homeless people panhandle. The majority of homeless people don't panhandle. But I will tell you, at least in the North Little Rock area, the majority of the people that you see panhandling probably are homeless, because I've met them and know them. So there's that. And then you get they're just going to spend it on drugs and alcohol. And my answer to that is, yep, probably, at least some of the time. As my old friend Shane, when he was unsheltered, would tell you that sometimes he did good with the money that he got panhandling, and sometimes he did bad with the money that he got panhandling. And isn't that just like the rest of us? It might not be alcohol or drugs, but aren't we like that? I am. So there's my 2 cents on panhandling. Take it for what it's worth. Let's see. Now there's another guy that we see sometimes over in North Little Rock, and he was needing some shoes, and he has big feet. He was a 13 or 14, and he could only wear certain colors because other colors hurt his feet. So we had found him some shoes and went looking for him, found him sitting in front of Target, and Diana had gotten out of the car while I went and found a place to park and bring the shoes. And she walked over and asked if she could sit down and chat for a little while, and he was floored. He said, "You want to sit and talk with me?" And that kind of got us folks just want to be seen. They want to be recognized. They want to be acknowledged. They don't want to be invisible. Uh, and it's such a simple thing to talk to folks. Be kind, be courteous, be nice. Let's see. I'm gonna run out of time, so I'm gonna try to wrap things up pretty soon. Let's see. I do want to talk about a couple of friends, David and Batman. Uh, they were a couple of guys that we would see over in North Little Rock, mainly around the Wendy's and the Barnes and Noble. Barnes and Noble is a pretty good place for, a few homeless people to hang out and read and relax and not, usually not be bothered. But yeah, David and Batman. David, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how either one of those folks ended up homeless. But at one point, David did find him a job. Got him a job working for Roto-Rooter or a company like that. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but and he had worked at it for a while and had saved up enough money he went out and bought an old, beat up, barely running motorhome. Wasn't licensed. He didn't have any insurance for it at first, but he could park it, and it got him in and out of the weather. He eventually was able to get it licensed, get some insurance, and he would, move it to Walmart parking lot for a while and then move it over someplace else. And then eventually he found a place, a mobile home park that he was able to park it and stay there. So we didn't see David for a while, but kept seeing Batman, and became really good friends with him. But he had grown weary of being homeless. He was tired of it and looking for ways to get out of it. And we saw him one day out in front of Target, and we had my granddaughter Rory with us. So we stopped and introduced her to him and said, to him, hey, this is our friend Batman. And I liked what he did. He was quick to point out that that wasn't his name. His name was Antonio. He wanted to be introduced to my daughter, our granddaughter, as Antonio. He went, and I thought that was pretty cool. But then later that summer, we hadn't seen him in a while, so we were looking for him, and Diane had gone into the Barnes and Noble because we thought we saw him, and he was in there. So he came out and was getting some stuff. And while we were out in the parking lot, David pulled up in a truck and came over and said he had been looking for him, and if he wanted it, he had a job for him. And Antonio was, yeah. And he was also had a place for him to stay. He could stay in the trailer with him. And so we got him some clothes, some work clothes out of the van, and he left with David, and we haven't seen either one of them since. So hopefully they're still working and off the streets. That's what I'm going to believe until proven otherwise. So let's see, who else? Oh, I did want to mention a guy named James. And what I like about this story is we knew James with the van. He had been at the shelter several times, and he was familiar with the van. And I'm sure the other agencies around town, River City, Jericho Way, and others, Canvas Community, all knew James and had helped him out. But what ended up getting James off the street was a lady that happened to run into him on her smoke break and struck up a friendship, and got more out of him than any of us had ever gotten out of him, and got him reconnected with his family. And now he's back in I believe Indiana with his family. And I like this story because it shows you don't have to be part of any of our groups. You just have to be a decent human being and look for people and be nice. And that's all there is. So I'm gonna do one last, because I'm running out of time on my phone. I found that it cuts off at a certain point, even if I'm not ready for it to. So there was a guy named Sam that used to sit up on the access road by where Taco Bueno is over in North Little Rock. We'd go by and see Sam. He'd be sitting in a lawn chair in coveralls, regardless of the season. Big old heavy coveralls. He never took anything from us. All he would do, was say hi, and he was happy to see us and had a smile on his face. And when we went by, we knew we weren't going to give him anything. It was just one of those things where we wanted to go by and just say hi. And so I miss Sam because we don't get to see him anymore. I don't know where he went to after that. So I hope this has helped personalize some of the folks. So when you're out and you see folks in North Little Rock, at least, think, yeah, those pretty good chance they're friends of Mark. But what's more important than being my friends is they're created by God, and God loves them. We ought to love them too. So God bless.